Good morning, everybody, and I welcome all members of the public and councillors to the latest meeting of North Northamptonshire's Executive, including all those who are watching on YouTube on our live feed. Can I remind members and members of the public to keep your phones and laptops on silent, and if you're not speaking, if you could mute your microphones, that would also be very much appreciated. So we move on to item 1, which is apologies for absences. Are there any apologies for absences?
There are none, Chair.
Okay, item 2, minutes of the meeting that were held on the 18th of January 24. They are set out on page 5 to 22 of your agenda packs. Are there any comments in regards to accuracy? Councillor Bidley.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, just a very slight typo on page 9. On the third paragraph on the page, it just says had a duty to twice. That's all. Okie dokie, we'll get that updated. That's fine. Any other notes of accuracy? Councillor Brackenbury.
Yes, thank you, and good morning, everybody, and thank you, Chair. Again, small, tiny typo on page 5, remembrance of Councillor Michael Tebbett. Members and officers were then invited to observe a minute apostrophe silence. I think there should be an S in there, but other than that, it's fine.
Okay. We'll pick up on that. Okay. So, can I have a mover to approve them with those amendments? Councillor Bunday, seconded. Councillor Brackenbury. Okay, can I have a show of hands in favour, please?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. So moving on to item 3, which is members' declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from members? Councillor Mercer.
Yes, on item 9, I'm a member of the board of Groundwork Northamptonshire, so I've been advised to leave the room for that item.
Jolly good, thank you very much. Councillor Mercer, just look into any other? No. Okay, so item 4 is the notifications to address the meeting. There's quite a few on there, so I'm not going to read them out, but I will call you up as and when you are due to speak. So item 5, performance indicator reports. So I would like to invite Councillor Valerie Anslow to the floor to address the meeting. Councillor Anslow, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. AFL 19. The number of rough sleepers rehoused into accommodation is stuck at 20, and the number found rough sleeping continues to concern us all, I'm sure. And as an elected member for Wellingborough, I'm concerned that these figures are going to rocket when the former Euro Hotel and Paragon in Knox Road close at the end of March. I know the housing options and rough sleeper team are working hard to find alternative accommodation, but I would argue that it's time to think outside the box and support our third sector who may well be willing to operate a shelter type of system common before COVID. There are voluntary groups in Wellingborough, Corby and Kettering who are keen to help solve the problem of not enough accommodation for those who, for a variety of reasons, end up homeless. This is a different subject, so that's one point I'd like to make. The second point is the pitifully low number of affordable houses built across North Northamptonshire in 22-23 shows how broken the housing market is. 382 out of 2,042 houses are affordable. We have the land supply, and we wait on private firms to decide that the market is right for them to build houses that the majority cannot afford. The much anticipated housing strategy for North Northants needs to address this problem in a creative and bold way. So the question again is, when will the strategy be ready for discussion? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Anslow. I'd like to invite Councillor Anne Lee to address the meeting. Councillor Lee, you have a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Further to what my colleague said, Councillor Anslow, yes, affordable housing, 8 mobile units are supposed to be built in a Grange in Kettering, and the timeline slips on that one. At the last executive a week ago, the timeline, the completion date was given as 24/25. So we're still waiting for that. Okay, page 31, decrease of use of e-scooters. Our residents have seen a decrease in the frivolous use of e-scooters and then due to the initial novelty factor fading, but e-scooters are increasingly used by the target group for people without cars to get to work. E-scooters have led to an increase in active travel, and I sincerely hope that we can keep them on our roads. Then STP 28, also on page 31, decreasing jobs by 3,000 jobs, which falls short of the target in the joint core strategy. It's a serious failure to achieve one of this council's core policies of safe and thriving places. Businesses have told me that there's only one person in the whole of NNC engaging with the business community. I look forward to hearing where those jobs have been lost, because it's indicated in the report that there's a survey going on. Page 40, STP 39 and 40, the number of repair jobs awaiting completion and the number of repair jobs outside the target date. These are repairs to housing, council housing. It says there that the system to measure that backlog is broken. The data is currently in a review. The measurements will start again in April. That's a failure of the KPIs, so we need to have those figures, and I hope that the council has those figures. It concerns me that we don't have the data on there. What's going on there? Is that a problem with IT that affects the repairs itself? Why do we have these grayed out KPIs? Because it means that the situation is not transparent to councillors and to the public. So the sooner we can have that KPI back on track, the better. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lee. So I'd now like to invite Councillor Bunday to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. On the various issues that have been raised by the speakers, I trust that the various different portfolio holders will address those. As far as the missing KPIs goes, I will respond to you in writing as soon as I can, Councillor Lee. This report covers the month of December, period 9, and the third quarter. It includes most of the KPIs that are monitored by the executive. That's 106 indicators are reported in this report, 44 monthly, 56 quarterly, and 6 annually. Approximately half of all 23-24 KPIs are reported on a quarterly basis, with just over a quarter a monthly and the rest annually. In period 9, of those KPIs with a target set, 38 indicators are on or exceeding target, 7 indicators are within tolerance of target, 16 indicators are performing below target, and 1 KPI does not yet have a third quarter data available. For those KPIs where the polarity of the direction of travel has been determined, performance has improved in 31, deteriorated in 25, 39 have changed by less than 5% or are still on target, and 1 had no previous data to determine the direction of travel. 31 of the 48 tracking measures have polarity determined. 13 of these have moved in a positive direction, 6 have stayed the same or deteriorated only marginally, and a further 11 have deteriorated by more than 5% during this period. And again, 1 indicator has no direction to report. Customer services receive requests to help in various different ways, whether it be telephone, face-to-face, e-forms, emails, or web chat. They have taken nearly 430,000 inquiries in the year to date. So far, we have had 400,000 physical visits to our libraries. 98.6% of our suppliers are paid within the 30 days. I'm sure members will want to comment on their own areas, Chair, and with that I'm happy to propose the recommendations of paragraph 3.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bunday and exec members have already indicated that they wish to speak. So Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to clear up some facts from Councillor Anslow's comments. S&H the owners of S&H have decided to close the facility. The officers have been talking to them, trying to get a decent time frame to reallocate accommodation for the residents there, but unfortunately they've given a hard deadline that's the end of March, so we've got to work to that. The rumours about Knox Road are untrue. It is not closing. And also suggesting that we speak to the third sector. We're already doing that. We're speaking to all parties to try and get S&H residents back to suitable accommodation.
Very good. Councillor Rowley, thank you very much. That's very reassuring. So I'm going to go to Councillor Brackenbury next, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Okay, I mean, there's a few things to take away from this. Firstly, in terms of our business relations team, it's actually a team of 3 full-time officers who work closely with the business community, as I do, to try to promote their activities. And of course, it's also a multi-agency operation which works beyond the borders solely of Northamptonshire, with the residual functions of the local enterprise partnership and so forth. So there's an awful lot of engagement with the business community. And I also would like to, just while I'm on the record, just pay tribute to that team for their energy and their enthusiasm. They're an absolute credit to this authority. Moving on, I mean, I do welcome the improvement in the trajectory on the planning service. There's been a lot of work gone in on addressing some chronic backlog situations, and while it certainly isn't perfect, as colleagues will know, there is a definite improvement in delivery of results in the planning service, and of course that is something we'll be constantly keeping an eye on and constantly seeking to improve, and that is certainly something which is attracting considerable attention at the moment. In terms of affordable housing, I do take the point that Councillor Anslow and later Councillor Lee made. I do take that point. There has been a 6% increase in affordable housing, and it's very close to the 20% threshold. It doesn't mean that we're complacent. It doesn't mean that more should not be done, and certainly the team is carefully looking into it. So in general terms, Chair, I welcome the enhanced suite of KPIs that we're looking at in this meeting. I think it's valuable to see an overall picture of how the authority is turning its business around, and I welcome future iterations of the same, and let's keep trying to work for an upward trend on as many as we can. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brackenbury. Just want to touch on the point of the low-cost social housing and such that's being developed across the county. I'm all for seeing as much of that being built as possible. We want people to be able to lay roots down in their homes and to be able to live full and active lives around Northamptonshire. It's part of our Big 50 vision about giving people what they need to have their best life, and social housing is a very big part of that, and we will be championing that as we go forward over the next year. Councillor Binley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm sure Councillor Rowley won't mind me picking up one point as I presented the original report to Executive back on the 16th of Feb 2023 for the former Grange site Methodist Church. Contained within that report under section 6.4 was an indicative timescale with a practical completion date forecasted in September 2024. However, that was caveated for obvious reasons, because these things can be quite fluid. And it said, although the exact programme will be agreed during the tender and contract award process, an indicative programme is below. So whilst I'm sure Councillor Rowley is, I know, working on this very, very hard to try and make sure this project is completed as soon as possible, it was clearly laid out in the report that that was not an exact timescale. Just picking up on the comments about e-scooters, of course the Voy trial that we have continuing at the moment within the whole of Northamptonshire, of which we are the lead partner, for the trial also being carried out in the West. What I would say there is there's not any novelty factor that's worn off. The reason that we have seen a downward trend, as per my quarterly meeting with Voy only the other week, is the fact that it's open air. And therefore, of course, this is a trend that is seen as a seasonal thing. I'm sure if we looked at how many people are sunbathing at this time of the year, there's probably quite a steep decrease. And exactly the same applies. However, of course, there's further work to be done there because we are actually seeing an interesting trend that we've not seen the same decrease in the Corby area. So Voy are trying to dive into that data and understand exactly why that drop-off has not been seen in Corby, the same as the other areas, as there's been a seasonal trend that's been repeated before. Thank you, Chair.
I think the answer there is the people of Corby are made of strong stuff, Councillor Binley. It's all that iron brew. Not advertising iron brew, of course. Okay, Councillor Pentland.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to pick up and highlight the positivity around the green and sustainable environment KPIs on the whole, that they're looking good, in a good direction, particularly the number of public EV charging points that are coming online. There's been quite a big increase there over the last few months, so that is really good to see. Obviously, Councillor Binley picked up on the Voice scooter trial, which has been extended, as we heard at the Sustainable Communities EAP the other week, and has saved around 5 million car journeys, I believe it is, which is great. Thank you.
Absolutely. I very much welcome the Voy test project that we have here in Northamptonshire. As many of you would know, it was myself that brought them into the county at the old county council days, and they were well received through the whole COVID pandemic with the copper handles to reduce infection transmission and so on, and they were a lifeline to individuals. And one story really sticks in my mind when we were doing a survey in the streets about it, was a lady who unfortunately had stage 3 cancer and had been to the hospital and had her chemotherapy, and she tried to explain to me how chemotherapy made her feel, and it was pretty lousy. So she then said when she got onto a Voy scooter and could do 13 mile an hour up the road and letting the wind blow all over her, it really helped. So that was the point that made me continue, even in the face of a lot of political challenge from our Labour friends at the county council at the time. But I'm glad that we did. I'm glad that the test is still an absolute positive thing for this area. So, Councillor Binley did move that report. Sorry, Councillor Bunday did move that report. Can I look to someone to second the report, please? Councillor Binley, thank you very much. The recommendations are set out on page 24 of the agenda pack. They've been moved and seconded. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please?
Unanimous, Chair.
That's very good. Thank you very much. So we move on to item 6, option appraisal for recommissioning public health services. I'd like to invite Councillor Lynn Buckingham to address the meeting. Councillor Buckingham, you have 3 minutes.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. Before I move forward to my 3 minutes, please may I just say really thank you for the climate change impact assessment tool, which is now accompanying most reports. A very welcome addition. So thank you for that. Public health outcomes framework for Northamptonshire, which I know is part of this report. Out of 159 reported indicators, only 19 are green, 84 indicators are amber, and 39 are red. The other indicators are grey, signifying nothing significant. This is a very low base to come from. how will poor performance to targets in future be penalised or brought, you know, because we want to keep growing as per everything else. It's just that we're coming from such a low base at the moment from those indicators. Although we've seen the report for next year and our ambitions, how easy is it going to be to come from that low base? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Buckingham. Councillor Anne Lee, you have a maximum of 3 minutes if you'd like to address the meeting.
Thank you. Right, this is the main proposal is to extend all contracts due for renewal for 1 year so that the contracts for all services can be jointly commissioned in 2025 after extensive research. There are currently very few providers in the market. I did some research into this online, into public health commissioning. It is an extremely complicated process. There is a helpful graph on the website that I found. It is very difficult at the moment. I wanted to speak because I wanted to warn when I saw that the commissioners would like to encourage new providers on the market. I wanted to warn because you will always get some companies such as Capita who come up and who don't really understand the situation and make an appealing offer undercutting the rest and then don't deliver, as we have seen many times. But I think the people who commission it in our organization know what they're doing. And these reports to check, for example, the children's needs analysis and the sexual health needs analysis have already been carried out. I see that this report will be shared with the Children's Trust under 752. Can those reports please also be shared with the members of the Health Scrutiny Committee, even if it is on a confidential basis? Because it would be good for the councillors on the Health Scrutiny Committee to have some idea of the timeline, to have some interaction with this process, to have some feeling of what's going on. And I would just ask to place the contracts in good time because, but we are starting a year in advance. So it's interesting to see this report. A lot of work has gone into it, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lee. I'd like to invite Councillor Dorothy Maxwell up to the microphone. Councillor Maxwell, you have 3 minutes.
Good morning. Options appraisal for recommissioning the public health services. When we had a county council involved, nothing happened, and we've been left waiting for this to happen to NNC for obtaining funding. Health in schools, which includes dental care, counselling and toilet training, has never seemed to happen. Why not? Looking at the counselling services in schools and referrals on page 55, this does not happen or it's slow to activate. In early years, teeth brushing for early year children could be extended to help vulnerable children. However, in reality, this does not happen, and children are less likely to be involved unless their parents are also less likely to attend the dentist. Maintaining a high standard of provision requires adequate staffing levels and ongoing professional development. In real life, this does not happen in schools, as there's no joined-up thinking. In-house provision will require NNC to invest additional resources or face challenges. Are we likely to make this happen? In the counselling services, this has a long waiting time to see a psychologist. In the meantime, children have to wait, no choice. On page 61, children need analysing as this has been carried out and understand where the gaps in services which support the commissioning service model and pathways for children and young people. In 7.5.4, this report shows that the Children's Trust obtained the Children's Trust, they obtained their views. It would be useful to know their thinking. In 7.56, as part of the Modelling Commissioning Group, there will be a robust engagement with key stakeholders, including residents and service users. If this happens in future, we can hope that the two services will happen and children will benefit from this in healthcare and counselling. Why can NNC do this and not wait for the West to make their mind up? Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Councillor Maxwell. I'd like to invite Councillor Jim Hakewill to the meeting now. Councillor Hakewill, you've got 3 minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Smithers. Look at point 7.1, Resources, Financial and Transformation in your report. It talks about going out to procurement. In the outturn report for period 8, vacancies in the procurement team were indicated as making a saving of 143,000. How will the executive ensure that sufficient and experienced staff are available to carry out this procurement? Appendix A is exempt. How can the significant sums involved be scrutinised? 7.6 says consideration by Executive Advisory Panel. This report has not been considered by Executive Advisory Panel. 7.7, consideration by scrutiny. 7.7.1, this report has not been considered by the Council's scrutiny function. Why has this very significant report not gone to scrutiny to gather the views of the wider councillor membership and members of the community and indeed the partners who we might be enlisting to help us achieve these outcomes? In 7.9.3, figure 3, Carbon Climate Management Tool, what is the probability of reaching a carbon neutral organisation status by 2030, as it says on the sheet, just 5 years and 11 months away? What risks do the executive members see in achieving that target?
Thank you very much, Councillor Hakewill. Right, members, have we got anything to say in relation to the report that's before you today? Councillor Mercer.
Yeah. Would you like me to answer the questions for the public?
You can do if you want.
Okay. Right. So first of all, thank you, Councillor Buckingham, for mentioning about the performance. We feel that we will be working very hard with our providers, and we've built up very strong relationships. And we will be, by taking the service to just North Northamptonshire, will be able to control the performance much greater in future. It was decided by the Shared Services Committee on 17th of January to to disaggregate this, and so that partially answers Councillor Maxwell's point about the West and having to wait for them. We won't have to. Councillor Lee, you mentioned health scrutiny. We will be working with health scrutiny. We've asked them to put a place on the agenda to deal with this, and so that also partially answers Councillor Hakewell's question as well. See, Councillor Hakewell, you mentioned about the scrutiny, and as you were just saying there, but this is just going out to procurement. This is the first stage. Then they will be coming back to scrutiny afterwards when we've got anything to report to say what solution we have, because there are various different solutions that we come up with. And as far as the staff for procurement, we have a new specialist procurement officer for public health. So we feel that that would do that, and it will also be going to an EAP. So that's who have I missed? Working with the Children's Trust, we will be working with the Children's Trust, Councillor Maxwell, to make sure that we get their views. And we have a Healthy Schools team as well, so we'll be working with those closely to make sure that we have very good outcomes, and especially, as you mentioned, about toothbrushing, and that's a big part of the government's push at the moment, so that will be part of this as well. Do you want me to just carry on with presenting the report? Or
if you would, yes, please, Councillor Mercer.
Okay. So this paper raises that we need to recommission a range of important public health services from 2025. It follows an agreement by the Joint Services Executive, as I said, to disaggregate these services because they're jointly commissioned at the moment. By disaggregating, we'll be able to provide the services that can be more easily tailored to the needs of this population and also fit with our developing infrastructure in the north, including our family hubs. And this is the first stage, how we design and develop these services. We've just got just over a year to do an extensive piece of work that will look at the evidence base as to what works in relation to these services, to engage with staff and service users, and to use local data to pull together models of care that offer the best outcomes for our local population. Before that piece of work, that's what we're bringing this to the executive today, to just start this process off. And it raises a fundamental issue that whether we look at providing these services in-house or commission external organisations to provide these services, or whether we look at a mixed approach. And we'll take on board Councillor Lee's comment that these are very complex services. So the paper outlines some of the advantages and disadvantages of internal versus external service provision. The services included in this paper are diverse, and so it's not easy to say that one single approach will fit all service areas. So perhaps clearer for sexual health services, an internal model will be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to provide, as we need to access a range of complex clinical staff, laboratories, etc., and the cost alone would possibly make this prohibitive. We also know that some functions of the 0 to 19 service would be very difficult for us to provide. Some of the reasons are stated in the paper, but one key one would be the recruitment and retention of clinical staff like health visitors. There's also a national shortage of health visitors, so the likelihood of attracting that rare resource out of the NHS is also very low. So what we need is to have some flexibility, the ability to respond to the engagement work we're planning with service users and with staff. The models we develop through the process must be best delivered externally, but we also need to have that flexibility so that if an in-house model is the best fit, then we can take that forward. If we get approval to have this flexible and evidence-based approach to the recommissioning process, we will then start our engagement and model development immediately. We'll be open and transparent with our current providers, involving them and their staff and service users in the process. As I said before, we'll engage with the Active Communities EAP and with health scrutiny, and we'll gain a wide range of views to share the developing models of care with them. So we want this commissioning to be gold standard and to become the blueprint for everything we commission in public health. We want everything to be based on the best evidence and to have a process that engages rather than disenfranchises our providers. We've asked for the process to be subject to internal audit so that we can learn and redefine our approach. So in summary, this paper is just the first step on the road to ensuring we have commissioned services that are right for this population, informed by evidence and engagement, and that help us reach our ambitions for improving the health and well-being of our people living in North Northamptonshire. So with that, I move to agree the recommendations in section 3.1.
Councillor Mercer, thank you. Any comments from members? Councillor Pentland, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to very quickly pick up on the comments Councillor Hakewell raised with regard to climate change and the reduction of carbon emissions by this council. Obviously, the primary focus of this particular report is public health services, and so I think it would be most appropriate to pick up on those questions around the wider carbon neutrality by 2030 in another forum, as we have done in the past at the Sustainable Communities EAP Executive Full Council, and as we will do again. We will have those discussions. Obviously, the indicator tool there is useful as we look to make sure the green thread runs through everything we do in this council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pentland. Councillor Bundy.
Thank you, Chair. Just to reassure members that we have now successfully recruited to all posts within our procurement department, so we are fully quoted.
Thank you for that, Councillor Bundy. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. And just to say that thank you, Councillor Mercer. A very comprehensive report. I thought that was very good. And to answer Councillor Maxwell's point about children, you know, I'd be astonished if you didn't mention children, and I thank you for doing that, Dorothy. But it is a great opportunity to reset the 0 to 19 programme. So to really look at what we are doing, are we focusing on the right areas? So this is a really good chance and a really good opportunity to do that. And to look at the third sector within that, and to look at the family hubs and bringing all that on board to bring it all in together. So this is really an exciting opportunity and a great way forward to look at what do our families need, what do our children need in support. So it's great, and so I welcome this report.
Thank you very much, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Brackenbury.
Thank you, Chair. And to echo Councillor Edwards, I very much welcome the report. It's good to see these services being considered in the round. The right options are reached for each individual service. I know it will keep the executive member for adults' health and well-being rather busy in looking at some of the findings that are going to come out, but that's all to the good. I think that it's a very good opportunity to reset where we are, what we do best as North Northamptonshire Council, where we can use external expertise if we need to, and to move forward on these really important services. So again, I welcome the report.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brackenbury. Councillor Mercer, did you go back to any of those comments?
Yes, just thank you. And I just reiterate that we are going to work on these by case basis. Each one will be looked at individually, and then each of the decisions will come back to myself to make. As you say, that will keep me quite busy. But I think it's only right that we get the right result for each of these services. Some of them are quite likely to be best provided by external providers, but if there are any opportunities to run a service that we can run in-house, we will certainly be taking that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mercer doesn't know any other way of life but be busy, an exceptionally busy individual. So that report has been moved by Councillor Mercer. Would someone do us the honours to second that? Councillor Edwards, thank you very much. So the recommendations have been moved and seconded. There are the recommendations are set out on page 51 of the agenda pack. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. So we move on to agenda item 7, determination of the admission arrangements for local authority to maintain community and voluntary controlled schools in North Northamptonshire for the 2025 intakes. So I'd like to invite Councillor Maxwell to come and address the meeting, please.
Hello again. Admissions to secondary schools 2024-25. Children and parents should have choices where their children goes to school. I would like to see gifted and talented children who cannot afford the bus fares to go to school, which is to extend their talent. It could be in maths, any subject, but given this opportunity. However, sometimes prevented this happening for children from poorer backgrounds. from doing this, which extends their talent. NNC, with the government's help, should make this happen, giving a bus pass. The school would help with the uniform, and they should get free school dinners. Last week, a child who successfully passed 20 plus GCSEs last year is now taking 17 plus A-levels. Maybe that's a bit excessive. But this happens, and luckily the school is backing them. These children are out there, but left out. Children who are looked after get gifted and talented schools, and their travel is paid for. But the other children, sadly, do not qualify. Why not? Poorer children are left out, and I feel that NNC/school admissions could do more to help. Will you consider this in 2025? Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Councillor Maxwell. So, Councillor Edwards, I'd like to invite you to introduce that report, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is for the determination of the admission arrangements for 2025 for our primary and secondary schools. So this report will show that we are reducing the PAN number for a number of schools which are located in Higham Ferrers and Rushden, Nassington and Morsley and Earls Barton. That is because of the number of primary places are not needed in those areas, so we're reducing the PAN in consultation with the schools, with the parents and with the governors as well, and so they have agreed to that. To answer Councillor Maxwell's point, and I know you've raised gifted and talented, and absolutely we have students that are gifted and talented up and down Northants. And there are outside organisations that can help and support these families. So places like the Kettering Old Grammar School Foundation, which give grants for specific areas to specific children to help them to be able to do this. And I know in other areas there are trusts that can help and support with this as well. So we can absolutely point families in the right direction with that. Just wanted to point out an error on page 80 in the primary schools for rural. The linked villages for Broughton Primary School should include Cransley, Little Cransley and Great Cransley as well. It does just say Broughton at the moment, but it does include the Cransley villages. With that, I move to the purpose of the report.
Thank you very much, Councillor Edwards. Members, are there any comments in relation to this? Councillor Binley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Councillor Maxwell, you'll have to forgive me. I'm not 100% sure whether I'm getting the right message from you with regards to homeschool transport, but I think what you were trying to say is what can Northants do about transporting people who are on lower incomes, basically to schools all over the county. Of course, as you know, we recently adopted the homeschool transport policy, where we'd made amendments after reviewing the policy which hadn't been reviewed for over 10 years, and that was adopted. And then, of course, that fell more in line and very much closer to the government guidance around homeschool transport, in which pupils who qualify for free homeschool transport are eligible to their closest available, suitable school. And I think that's only right, to not be transporting people all over the county due to parental choice and expecting the council taxpayers of Northamptonshire to pay for that service. I think really what we need to be focusing on is making sure that the local schools are providing the best possible education, so that everybody has that equal opportunity rather than the postcode lottery. I certainly think back to when I went to school, you didn't have a choice. You were either in the catchment area or or you weren't, and that was it. And it was a parental choice if they then wanted to drive you to school. And of course, a lot of parents didn't necessarily have a second car in those days. So I think policy that we've adopted is the right policy for Northamptonshire at this time, and I don't think it needs reviewing again right now for, as you say, the next year. But of course, we will continually review the policy to make sure it is current and relevant. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Binley. Before we go to moving and seconded of this piece of work, Councillor Edwards, did you want to sort of come back on any other comments?
No, I mean, Councillor Bidney is correct. You know, we did have the home to school transport. We need to make it fair for everybody, and that home to school transport policy is there, and it is fair for everybody.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. So Councillor Edwards has moved that report. Can someone look to second the report, please? Councillor Binley, thank you very much. The recommendations are set out on page 71 of the agenda pack. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we now move on to item 8, Department for Transport Funding Allocations. I'd like to invite Councillor Anslow to address the meeting. Councillor Anslow, you have 3 minutes.
There are elements of this report which are welcomed and long overdue, and I'm pleased that we, as a council, agree the allocation of £3 million a year for the next 3 years. I think it's going to council next week. I think this is the biggest investment in the highway network since 2021, as it says in the report. I hope it won't all go on potholes, because I'm sure we have all got examples in our areas of holes being filled, and after a short while the holes appear again and the material is washed into the gutter with the increase in rainfall. Pothole filling is like a sticking plaster, and sometimes the only real option is for a complete overhaul. 4.7 says the local people will see how the money is spent. Well, potholes are dangerous, true, and it would be good to know how much is paid out in insurance claims to members of the public whose cars are damaged by them, and how many accidents are due to them. For some roads, however, the filling of potholes is not the answer. And due to underfunding for many years, there are many roads that are more holes than not. And a major resurfacing needs to happen. I know this is more expensive, and it mentions the risks of that in the report, but the outlay on significant roads would probably be cost effective in the long run. I'm certain that Kia, who, like the Children's Trust, has only to ask and the funds are found, are rubbing their hands together at this injection of funds. Kia are not a significant partner to this council, but they use a significant amount of our time, our budget, and their effectiveness calls our effectiveness into account. It was brought up at Audit and Governance on Monday that Kia needs to have its effectiveness scrutinised. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Anslow, and I'm glad that you support our extra £9 million investment into the highways in Northamptonshire, and I do very much share your views on Kia, and as you know, I have spoken out about them recently and will continue to do so until we see an improvement in what we're getting across our area. Councillor Lee, I'd like you to come and address the meeting. You have a maximum of 3 minutes.
Thank you. Right, I support the recommendation to accept this funding for the proportion of the funding that goes to potholes. I just wondered, however, do we have a key performance indicator to prove that the millions pumped into potholes will actually have a tangible, enduring result? Many of our roads are in an appalling condition at the moment. When driving around, we have become used to dodging the potholes, but there is a new factor. In Kettering, residents have been complaining about the new LED lights not being bright enough. I went to check last night. I drove around several estates in Kettering, and with the LEDs, it is very difficult. You cannot see the potholes. That was the big shock I got driving around. And then I found out that between 10 o'clock at night and 6 o'clock in the morning, these LED lights get dimmed. And then it becomes a very dangerous situation for the riders of e-scooters, for pedestrians, for cyclists, because the roads are so dark. Now, I understand that we need to save electricity, but for a pedestrian or a cyclist, a rape alarm won't prevent you falling down a pothole or falling over. So I wonder, Councillor Binley, what sort of indicators do you use to work out whether care is providing value for money? And how do you measure that? Do you base your assessment on the number of potholes repaired according to Fix My Street? Do we independently verify the quality of the repairs that are being carried out? Can you tell us more about the processes that this council uses to measure CARE's performance? Because a lot of money, increasing pots of money, are going down, are being poured down those potholes, whereas even our leader has gone to the press to mention that he's not very happy with CARE's performance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lee. And I just wanted to answer a few of the questions, and I know Councillor Binley will go into a lot more detail than myself, but the road you're talking about, I believe, Councillor Lee, is Deeble Road in Kettering, which has been brought to my attention by Councillor Elliot Prentice. Elliot has been very, very strong in his representations to me about the situation we find ourselves in down there. I have in turn have asked the Executive Director for Place and Economy to bring to me a report about the lights that go on in that area and about the light ability of the lumen of them and so on. And that will be something that we will look to see if they are fit for purpose, as you say. There's no point in having street lights if they're not bright enough to light up the street, in my view. But thank you. Councillor Maxwell, I'd like to invite you to address the meeting.
Good morning again. Highways Transport, Block Funding 2024-25. What great news that the government has granted 9.768 million has been awarded to NNC. The good news is that the utilisation of the government grant maintain and upgrade the highway network, page 138, will ensure that the potholes will be a thing of the past. Residents will be delighted that this will happen. Page 140, 410, block funding for the A14 Huntington scheme. The former County Council agreed to give 1.4 million towards this part of the A14. Does this mean that part of the A14 near Thrapston roundabout will be finished and the lights completed? What date? When CARE gets this funding, will they clear up the rubbish, signs, tyres, as well as mending the potholes? Can I ask CARE to put larger bins on the A45 between Stanwick and the A14 to keep it free of rubbish? Overall, this is great news that the residents will hear and that the government have kept their promise to make sure potholes are a thing of the past. Lastly, can NNC / CARE make sure that white lines on roads, for example, Great Addington and Woodford, are marked out? No street lights means accidents. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Maxwell. And I'm sure Councillor Binley will pick up the fact that the A14 and A45 is Highways England Road and it's their responsibility, but Councillor Binley will go into that in a little bit more detail. Councillor Hakewell, I would like to come and address the meeting for 3 minutes, please.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. It may be 3 minutes or less, I think.
You have a maximum of 3 minutes, Councillor Hakewell, so...
Oh, thank you
use them
for
wisely.
confirming that. That's a bit of a shock. Your report that you talk about on the lighting would be better brought to scrutiny and for public scrutiny as well, rather than to just yourself. But I'm sure you will do that and bring it to us all, because that rollout is going across the whole of NNC as I understand it. I can welcome too the Climate Change Impact Assessment Tool in version 1 as shown in Appendix A. My point is, and the previous point, is how will the actual outcome of our climate change mitigation objectives be evidenced? We need evidence for this, not just reports, monitored and reported as part of the NCCY journey to a carbon neutral 2030. Irrespective of which committee or panel it will be reported to, the question is, how will we know we're on the right trajectory and we're moving forwards, not stagnant or backwards? In 3, for recommendations, 3.1 goes on to talk about the highways money that has been allocated. How does the 24/5 highways funding compare to the 23/4 funding? And in 3.3, an alternative option considered, and I think I find this slightly amusing, why would the council ever spend money on schemes that are not a priority as an alternative decision? It seems a little pointless, although I could point some that aren't a priority that are being spent on. The funding in 4.3 shows our HS2 bonus as being 1.069 million in 23/4 and 24/5. That is a real terms decrease in funding based on inflation generally, materials and wage inflation specifically. What is the executive doing to lobby government for an indexed real terms increase in 24/25? The most constant complaints we receive are about the appalling state of our roads. There are 3 ways I can get here to this meeting today from where I live. 2 of those routes are virtually impassable without major risk to tyres, especially when the potholes look nice and smooth, full of water. I appreciate you all realise from the problem, Councillor Smithers, because you've been responsible for highways on Northamptonshire County Council from 2019 and then here as the leader. How are you going to solve the problem, in your words, of shoddy workmanship?
Thank you very much, Councillor Hakewell. So I'd like to invite Councillor Binley to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Of course, I will just pick up the points. I'm getting a bit of feedback. Is anybody else getting that from my... Oh, okay, must just be my hearing then. First of all, Councillor Anslow, thank you ever so much for your comments. Unfortunately, you stole a lot of my report in doing so. So you may hear that again. Of course, you talked about the pothole repair and how, in some instances, of course, you talk about how then the pothole is damaged again. But excuse me, what you actually will see is in most cases, it is not actually the pothole. It is the surrounding area that then deteriorates. Of course, in their works, Kier do try, wherever feasibly possible, to remove a larger section so that they are capturing the rest of the area that is degraded. But this is not always possible, because quite often there are things going on underneath the surface which are not necessarily visible to the eye. And so, of course, that is where in some instances you do then get that later on, that breakdown of the surrounding area, and it almost looks as if the pothole repair has broken down itself. And of course, I know that you talked about insurance claims and damages to vehicles. I know that these figures have previously been reported, but if members do want updates on those, of course, they can use the appropriate channel to request more updated information. And of course, I know that was actually not that long ago reported in the media due to a request made by them. The road resurfacing schemes, of course, yes, we need to do more, and that is exactly what this report is talking about. And I will touch on the fact that we use a matrix that decides the prioritisation of the various road resurfacing schemes that we need to carry out. I do refute the comments made about Kier rubbing their hands when they see this. And we do look at their KPIs. We are constantly monitoring them. We have a team that liaise with Kier. There are quite a number of them, and I will touch on that in a moment because I know that Councillor Lee also raised it. We talk about scrutinisation of the Kier contract. Well, my colleague across the way will recall that it went to scrutiny this year and was actually scrutinised. The Kier contract was scrutinised because we have just completed a full year with Kier. So that has been to scrutiny, that has been scrutinised. And it will happen again at the beginning of next year because, of course, there will be another year that's been completed and therefore it will go back to scrutiny. Councillor Lee, I know that you've raised LED lights, and of course the leader has touched upon that. Of course, I'm not going to go into too much detail because that's not relevant to this report. LED lights is managed by a completely separate contract that we have with Balfour Beatty, and therefore it's not really relevant to this, albeit I take your point about potholes and avoiding them. However, of course, one would hope that you've got your lights on your vehicle, so of course that will also help with visibility. But I do take your point that, of course, we are, as a separate thing, rolling out the LED lighting upgrade as part of a completely separate programme, and the leaders already touched upon Deeble Road as a specific case because, of course, we had both requested additional information with regards to the lighting upgrade programme. Councillor Maxwell, again, I welcome your comments around the positivity because this is a positive step forward with regards to funding because, of course, you alluded to the NNC funding, which, again, I will touch upon in my capital report. So, again, you stole a lot of what I was going to say, so thank you for that. And as Councillor Smithers has already stated, the A14, that previous agreement that was made to cover costs, or some of the costs, with regards to the upgrade programme, that is a national highways programme. But you will be pleased to know that we have regular meetings with National Highways, for which I am involved, whereby we get regular updates on these schemes. We are responsible for the clearing of rubbish, even along the National Highways maintained routes. So we are responsible for that as a local authority, as we are responsible for the bins and any size increase of bins. It might not be that we need to actually upgrade the size of the bin, it might be that we need to increase the frequency. So if that is the case, if you have got specific concerns, again, if you could raise those through the appropriate channels, and of course we can pick that up. And with regards to white lines, again, that's just something to go on Fix My Street. It's something I've reported myself. Only across the road, the taxi lane ones were upgraded the other day because they had faded, and that had been reported via Fix My Street. Councillor Hakewell, with regards to climate, I'm sure that Councillor Pentland will pick up on that again for you. And yes, Councillor Hakewell, you're absolutely right. Of course, with regards to the HS2 money, which again I will mention due to the previous report that came to executive, you are correct in the fact that, of course, due to inflation, unless we see any significant movement there, as long as inflation increases, as we've seen, albeit, of course, inflation has dropped significantly compared to previous years, we may well see a real-time cut in that funding based on inflation and salaries, etc., as you alluded to. However, both officers are in constant communication with the Department for Transport with regards to fairer funding, and, you know, all sorts of things, such as, for example, the Isham bypass. We're in regular communication with them. And there are lots of other organisations that we communicate with, such as Transport for the East Midlands, where, because the East Midlands is seeing significant growth, we are constantly lobbying as an organisation, both as NNC, but also as part of those wider organisations. We are lobbying central government for fairer funding in that regards, because we are a rapidly growing area. So, Chair, I will now move on to the bulk of the report. So this report is to provide information on the capital funding allocation for the financial year 24-25 for the Department for Transport. So I, of course, will now refer to them as DFT to save a bit of time. This funding is for the maintenance and improvement of our transport and highways network in line with the local transport plan, which is the Northamptonshire Transport Plan, and identified priority maintenance schemes. The highways asset maintenance prioritisation matrix is the process that is used to prioritise works. We have been notified of the following allocations for 24-25, highways maintenance block needs element of 3.735 million, the highways maintenance block incentive element, which is 0.934 million. This is still subject to confirmation from the Department for Transport for this year. The potholes fund of 3.735 million and the integrated transport block funding of 1.364 million. Just to touch on a point that Councillor Hakewell made, it is the same allocation as last year, and that is actually mentioned in the report. This does not include the funding allocation for the Department of Transport as per the executive paper approved on the 21st of the 12th, 2023, with the additional allocation of 1.069 million allocated for the 24-25 year. But as previously been mentioned, we've seen that allocation also for the 23-24 financial year. We are also proposing a £3 million of additional NNC capital funding as per the executive approved recommendations on the 8th of the 2nd, 2024, which is due to be discussed at full council next Thursday. So if this is approved, this will be additional funding on top of this DFT funding and will be an extra £3 million for the next 3 financial years for highways maintenance, so totalling £9 million. This would make it the biggest investment this authority has made into our local highways network. 4.5 of the report explains details of some of the benefits the funding will have to help deliver within the local transport plan, and 4.6 also provides some details about how this funding links into the improvements for walking and cycling routes, which of course links into the LC WIPs. The Highways Maintenance Block and Potholes Fund is used to support routine maintenance of the network, and 4.7 covers the details of the policies. The programme of works will be published as per the DFT guidance, so residents can see how the money is being spent. The Integrated Transport Block delivers measures which contribute towards the Northamptonshire Transport Plan, and which is the one that links into the LC WIPs, which is detailed in 4.9 of the report. Therefore, Chair, I'd like to move the recommendations made at 3.1A to B of the report for the reasons set out in 3.2.
Thank you very much, Councillor Binley, and I'd like to echo that large investment into our roads. It's absolutely an achievement for this authority and for the residents of Northamptonshire to be able to drive around on some slightly better roads when we invest that money into repairing, resurfacing, etc., etc. So wholeheartedly support this report. Councillor Mercer.
Thank you. I also wholeheartedly welcome this report. Hopefully people will be able to get out, cycle and walk and make sure that they don't fall down a pothole, as been mentioned earlier on, and get a healthier life. I would encourage anyone to, if they see a pothole, to report it on Fix My Street. I do that constantly, walking around, taking photos of it, and they do get fixed, and so it's really worthwhile. I'm not sure everybody really understands that. I heard somebody the other day saying we should set up a system for reporting, which I thought was interesting. They obviously didn't know we had one already.
Well, Councillor Mercer, I'm not going to say anything on that point, but I would encourage people to report those potholes on Street Doctor. One thing I would like to debunk is the myth that our contractors are making double money if they're going back to some of these defaults, because that's not actually the case. The contract states that if a repair fails, they have to go back at their own cost. Whilst it's inconvenient if a repair fails for residents, there's no financial impact to this authority if our highways contractors have to go back to repairs that they've already done which have failed. So, Councillor Pentland, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I think the quick and simple or easy answer on the climate change reporting is that we've had a few reports over the last year that look into the detail of the projects that were set out in the carbon management plan, how we're progressing with those, what the data is looking like. We'll have the future reporting of that, which sets out the various projects and how we're progressing with them. Again, the baseline data, that all gets regularly reported on for everybody to look at. So I hope that provides some reassurance.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pennon. Councillor Bunday.
Thank you, Chair. There was some question over what exactly the money was being spent on and whether it was all going on potholes. Can I just refer members to Appendix A of item 12 of this meeting, which is the capital outturn, which actually itemises where the money is being spent.
Thank you very much. Councillor Binley, back to you, just to sum up and move the recommendation, and I will look for a seconder for you.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you, Councillor Mercer, for your comments. I'm not sure whether Councillor Smithers was referring to a specific point that he said he wouldn't mention anymore, but I will, and you're absolutely right with regards to Fix My Street. And we do need to bust that myth that has unfortunately been spread around by a certain person who is from another political party, who said that there should be something set up to report potholes, which of course has unfortunately caused an awful lot of confusion with members of the public, and has been challenged by some of them who were actually aware of Fix My Street. So I would too echo your comments absolutely that members do need to report it as well as our members and members of the public via Fix My Street. And also because as Councillor Smithers has picked up on with regards to CARE, we do hold regular meetings with CARE to hold their feet to the fire with regards to their performance, and we are constantly challenging them. And you know, I know it was alluded to the issue that Councillor Smithers has raised with CARE. And we are working on that to make sure that CARE are absolutely held accountable and to address any service level failures as soon as possible. As you will see from the KPIs that we've already discussed, CARE are performing within their contractual agreements. However, we absolutely want to make sure that where they do fail to meet their SLAs, albeit they are within the acceptable tolerances as per the contract, that they absolutely do then rectify those issues as soon as possible, and we will continue to hold them accountable for the public that we serve within Northamptonshire.
Thank you very much, Councillor Binley. So I assume you have moved your report as prior. Can I look for someone to second that report, please? Councillor Howe, thank you very much. That's been moved and seconded. The recommendations are on 138, page 138 of your agenda pack. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we now move on to item 9, community strategy and strategic investment into the voluntary community and social enterprise sector. Councillor Mercer, I understand you're leaving at this point. Thank you very much. I would like to invite Councillor Lynn Buckingham to address the meeting. Councillor Buckingham, you have 3 minutes, as I'm sure you're aware. Yeah, that gives you 2 minutes to speak then. I'm only joking. I'll wait till you get your notes. Is your mic on, Councillor Buckingham? There we go. The time starts.
Thank you. Community investment funding. The funding envelope outlined within the strategy will not see funding increase or uplifts in the 3 years the funding is to be used. This coming after 2 years of static funding in the sector. So 2 years ago, we said we would keep these grants on for the next 2 years. So there's no uplift at all. That will be 5 years. You as a council know what it's like to have your funding squeezed so badly that you can't function as you would have liked to. So the funding there isn't enough for the 5 strategic themes for innovation, for growth. It doesn't even cover any accommodation where organisations will have to expand into the whole area. Just my thoughts, and you know, it's not enough to do what you want the voluntary community social enterprise sector to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Buckingham. I'd like to invite Councillor Valerie Anslow to address the meeting. Councillor Anslow, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, I welcome this report, which recognises the valuable work that the voluntary community and social enterprise sector do for North Northampton and its residents. These groups, who are close to the ground, see the need and respond in innovative ways. 2.4 identifies the 5 aims that we as a council will strengthen the VCSE groups to deliver their core vision, our core vision, sorry. This links wonderfully with the comments I made earlier regarding homelessness and rough sleepers. Before the pandemic, shelters in Kettering, Corby, Wellingborough and Rushden provided the shelter which for many entrenched rough sleepers was their housing first model. Bullet point 5 on 2.4 is provide a framework to support innovative approaches which bring about necessary change. Now, I would argue again for a shift in how rough sleeping is addressed, involving these voluntary groups and people who have lived experience of rough sleeping. I strongly support the 8 key themes, especially when a community is keen to take on an asset that currently belongs to NNC. With this in mind, the Hemingwell Centre, a community asset transferred by the former borough of Wellingborough, still has to have its finalised lease. I just wondered when that was going to happen. And it's also interesting to read which community centres were supported by the former boroughs and continue to be. Is there any scope to include centres which were not part of that arrangement to be included in the new one? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Anslow. I'd like to invite Councillor Lee now to address the meeting. Councillor, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I agree with everything that Councillor Anslow said. It's clear that a lot of work has gone into this paper. The voluntary sector is very important, and there are regularly studies published about how much every single job, every single voluntary person adds to the local economy, to the community. Two things strike me though. It was left late to inform providers of some services about a new system. Only last week I was here talking about accommodation concern and the Citizen Advice Bureau asking what had happened to the contract for housing advice. And they were subsequently invited to a meeting where it was explained to them that there was this new system. But the voluntary sector is in crisis because volunteer retention is increasingly harder. Younger people are less likely to volunteer on a long-term basis. It's really, we're in a spiral there, a downward spiral of how much local authorities and national authorities are expected to fund to make up for the gap. There is little, the second thing I wanted to mention, there's little mention of children in here. Okay, they're mentioned in the ambitions and the outcome, but the themes are clustered around older people, financial inclusion, community transport, which are all very valid aims. What about youth groups, youth clubs? Okay, there are family hubs, but what about young people? There's a pressing need for sports clubs, karate clubs for children. So there's a gap there which the LAPs, the local action partnerships, have identified children and young people as deserving greater focus. The whole thing is really a tragedy in motion. But I understand this council is under funding pressures. I do understand that. But I am concerned for the loss in capacity in the voluntary sector, because they are delivering so much more, so much value for all the money that's put into them. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lee. I'd like to invite Councillor Hakewell now to address the meeting. Councillor Hakewell, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Smithers. I read with interest on page 6 of the North Northamptonshire Communities Strategy 24-27 that an area of concern in Kettering Rural Local Area Partnership is, Kettering Rural, support for anxiety, which is a barrier to accessing services. It's true there are a lot of anxious people in Rothwell at present based on this committee's decisions. On page 10 of the strategy, bullet point is, the transfer of assets or services is an opportunity, and there will be a place-led approach which responds to local demand or aspirations from communities. What does a place-led approach mean? I welcome that there's no forced devolving of assets and services, which has been a long-term promise even before the unitary was established. If assets are transferred, will appropriate long-term funding follow, given that the costs are removed from NNC's accounts and transferred to town or parish or community organisation? All current services to the community as we sit here are being paid for by residents. Transfers risk double taxation. How will the executive avoid double taxation? What feedback and amendments were made to the policy being discussed, resulting from the Place and Environment Scrutiny's comments at its meeting on the 5th of February? Almost no time to be able to change a report which may already have been written. But what feedback and amendments, as was shown in the report, were made as a result of Place and Environment Scrutiny's comments? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hakewell. Councillor Maxwell, if you'd like to come, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Good morning again. Community Strategy Voluntary Sector. Sorry. I had no idea what VCSE did to help the communities. In Denford, where I'm the ward member, they're faced with no lights in the village, and older people are facing no lights and therefore limited to getting out at night. What can be done? Can you help with their health? On page 11155, you have 11 staff. What do they do? In Great Addington, they need a disabled parking bay outside the school. Can you help by funding the disabled area? The community centre needs help with this. Is funding limited? On page 156, 4.19, could you help with the Earthlinborough Centre in College Street and Crow Hill? On page 159, 5.4, I see that East North Hants never funded the infrastructure to support these areas. Why not? What happened to Rushden, who's never been mentioned over the years? Corby, Kettering, Wellingborough have all had funding over the years from the County Council. Why has Earthlinborough, Rushden, Oundle, Raunds been left out? This clearly needs addressing in future. Thank you for listening.
You're welcome, Councillor Maxwell. We will always listen. Okay, thank you very much. So, Councillor Rowley, would you like to introduce the report and answer those many questions that have been fired towards your directorate?
Thank you, Chair. Right, so through the questions, Councillor Buckingham, the funding pots, for the last few years for the specific pot of the VCSE has been static, but there are multiple other pots as outlined in the report that have come through, and in the report I will highlight some increases in that. The infrastructure element of the report will help with VCSE organisations that need support in bid writing or accommodation increases, etc., etc. Councillor Onslow, the innovation across all areas. Yes, it's part of the strategy, so that's what we're looking for, is innovative ways, I can't say either, of getting support from the VCSEs, who have historically always been excellent at coming up with novel ways to solve problems. So that's encouraged in the strategy. And there is going to be a full review of all community centres, etc., over the coming year to years to bring them in line. Councillor Lee, the VCSE organisations were notified in September last year and written to in November last year, so it wasn't a few weeks ago that they were told. It may well be that's the first meeting they've attended. And the mention of children's, that's in a separate report that's coming to committee at a later date. Councillor Hakewell, place-led means that they come to us, putting it short and blunt. What was it? Scrutiny, sorry, that was it. The recommendations and comments were mostly, from what I understand, changes for spelling mistakes, grammatical, and the other stuff.
The community centre review.
Yeah, and the community centre review, which is ongoing. In terms of asset control, asset handovers, we will work with Councillor Binley, his area, for asset transfers if communities want to transfer assets. But once they've moved over, we've got no control over what that community organisation or town and parish council do with it. So funding forward would depend on whatever has been decided or agreed at time of transfer for needs. And Councillor Maxwell, you've made a lot of comments about historic funding, which obviously I can't comment on because I wasn't involved in it and it wasn't part of this council. So, moving on to the report, this is to introduce the Council's community strategy and to set out the new VCSE strategic grants framework for a 3-year period from the 1st of April 2024. This will replace the previous strategic grants arrangements which the Council inherited from former sovereign councils, and the purpose of this strategy is to emphasise and strengthen the role of VCSE residents and communities have in helping to deliver this Council's corporate plan and Northamptonshire's integrated care system Live Your Best Life strategies. The Executive in 2022 approved the extension of the VCSE strategic grants inherited from the former councils until 2024, when the strategy could be brought forward to this council, which it has now. Community strategy is this council strategy, but also brings key themes which underpin several national and local agendas into the coordinated framework for effective partnership working within the VCSE. This will be achieved through mutual relationships between all directorates within the council, the VCSE and town and parish councils. The strategy will also support positive relationships across all organisations, across many sectors and with residents and their communities to drive innovation and collaboration. The strategy has 5 principal aims for the next 3 years. Emphasis and strengthen the role of VCSE sector, residents and communities have in helping deliver the Council's objectives, develop a coordinated vision for effective partnership working on equal terms and wherever possible, co-production with the VCSE organisations alongside town and parish councils. Set out the Council's approach to financial investment within the VCSE to promote sustainability through a range of funding sources, including grant giving by the Council and making infrastructure support to the sector. Strengthen the ability of the VCSE sector to deliver services and connect communities, and finally to provide a framework to support innovative approaches where facilities necessarily change given the needs of the local communities post-pandemic and current economic climate. It is also proposed that the VCSE strategic grants framework will focus on the following themes: core cost support to the community, where supported by the former sovereign council. Financial inclusion, community transport, prevention of social isolation for older people, community mental health and well-being, increased resilience to the VCSE to provide support for vulnerable residents as identified through the new Support North Northants service, and promote advocacy of equalities. Within North Northants, there are 368 VCSE member organisations, many of whom operate successfully without funding from the Council. They range from small volunteer-run community groups to large charities, and some provide very specific services such as debt casework, mental health counselling, support to victims of domestic abuse and drug treatment and recovery. With the adoption of the Council's corporate plan and the ongoing development of Big 50 for 2050, the VCSE will play an important role in helping this Council to deliver most of the strategic objectives. The report highlights numerous examples of where the VCSE are helping the Council deliver on the priorities, but it's important to ensure that where the Council is grant funding VCS delivery, the investment is to be making a demonstrable contribution. In preparation for this strategy, the current VCSE infrastructure organisations, which is SERVE and Groundwork Northamptonshire, have engaged with the organisations across the VCSE network, and the first North Northamptonshire sector-wide engagement event was held in 2023 in September, where over 100 VCSE organisations were represented. At this event, the organisations were advised of the current grant model would be ending, and the new funding strategy, if approved, would commence from September 2024. A series of co-production meetings have also been held with VCSE partners. These meetings have been open, frank and transparent to inform what need to the funding and why. It should only be pointed out, that the North VCSE Oversight Group leaders have proactively helped to shape this strategy, and I thank for their contribution. The current strategic VCSE grant arrangement totals £671,721 per annum, but these are not the only grants funded by NNC provided to the VCSE. Section 5.1 shows other grant funding that this council invests in the VCSE sector. This totals £1.82 million of grant investment for our communities in 23-24. This is set to rise in 24-25. At the moment, it stands at just under £2 million. As detailed in the report, a number of community centres and sports clubs are funded from this 671,000 VCSE grants. Office has been speaking to these organisations over the last 12 months to understand their needs and what supports they would require to become self-sustainable. To be clear, it is proposed that this funding will continue in the current levels. It should also be made clear that town and parish councils will not be forced to take over any assets under this strategy. The proposed breakdown of VCSE grant allocation can be seen in the first 8 lines of the table in section 7.1.1. This report has been to 2 EAP boards and scrutiny where their comments have been taken on board and integrated into the strategy. I would finally like to personally thank all those who contributed to the community strategy and proposed the recommendations in 3.1 of this report for the reasons in 3.2.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rowley. I've got indications from Councillor Binley that he would like to speak. So, Councillor Binley, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to briefly pick up on the aspect of community asset transfers, Councillor Rowley kindly said earlier, it's something that we would work on in partnership, basically. Just referring, and I don't really want to go into too much specifics on a case-by-case basis. However, it was mentioned earlier about the Hemingwell Community Centre, and of course, as Kerry knows all too well, when I was previously in the role that Councillor Rowley is, it was an area that was identified to me due to the partnership working that we had and have with Greatwell Homes. And with regards to that community asset transfer, of course, working with my predecessor, and unfortunately, of course, that now falls to me. So it's come back full circle. It is an area that we are working on. It is quite a complex community asset transfer. There have been a number of challenges, and to put it bluntly, the Borough Council of Wellingborough, I don't really think had agreed with all parties before hand that community asset transfer would take place. Of course, the challenges exist around some disagreement between the current occupiers, the Hemingwell Community and Skills Centre CIO, and Greatwell Homes. However, that has progressed quite significantly, and the heads of terms have been agreed with Greatwell Homes, the ongoing communication has been taking place with the CIA. At this point in time, though, there is not a time frame for when that will be completed. However, it is being expedited to complete as soon as practicable. Again, if you wish to have any further updates, if you direct those through the appropriate channels, of course, officers will gladly give you updates. Just to note, of course, you're talking about community asset transfers and will people get money to continue the running of those facilities. Again, another ongoing community asset transfer, which actually probably Councillor Anslow, you will know all too well, is around the Daylight Centre. And that is something that's being progressed, and I only had a meeting with them just a few weeks ago and officers to help progress that, because again, that's one that unfortunately was stuck because the Borough Council of Wellingborough had not completed that before vesting day. So we are now trying to move that along as soon as possible. The Daylight Centre is a bit of an example there in the fact that, of course, we are moving along and papers are being drawn up for a delegated decision on that community asset transfer. What I would point out is they do not receive funding from NNC. They at the moment, they are renting at a peppercorn rent from NNC. However, the investment into that property, where they've done quite a lot of significant works there, they've upgraded the kitchen substantially and the rest of the communal areas, as well as shower and washing facilities. They have gone out and got grant funding to do that work. And I think that's very much what we want to encourage and we want to support, and we will support them. And I'm sorry, I don't want to put words in Councillor Rowley's mouth, but that's where we have the communities team who will help support with that kind of function. So I think they're really kind of a prime example of what we would like community asset transfers to look like. And of course, there are various tests that must be carried out before we do complete any community asset transfer, which is why I think it's absolutely right that the process as it exists means that the decision must be signed off by the leader of the council. Hopefully that just helps shed a bit more light on a community asset transfer, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Binley. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. And I just wanted to highlight Councillor Lee, I think it was, that mentioned children and young people, and you're absolutely right to mention it, and you'd be wrong of me not to mention it as well. And there is absolutely, as Councillor Rowley said, a separate report coming back through, because we know there's a dip in youth clubs, we know there's a dip in voluntary organisation providing organisations for young people, and we need to see that increasing. So that's why it's on a separate report that will be coming forward for that. But I think it's right to mention one of the 5 principal aims about the strength and the ability of the voluntary sector to deliver services and connect communities. And there are so many amazing volunteers out there that provide sometimes very niche services and sometimes massive services. And it's right to recognise them for the fantastic and outstanding work that they do. And to link them in with the council can only be a good thing. And getting our priorities over there and working with the most vulnerable people is great to recognise that. So I do welcome this report.
Thank you very much, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Brackenbury.
Thank you, Chair. And in union with, I think, people across the political divide, I mean, I very much welcome this report. It's a huge piece of work. And I think, Councillor Rowley, you and everybody who's contributed to it, thank you very much for all that you've done. And I don't just mean in North Northampton Council. I mean, there are 368 voluntary and community groups who operate in Northamptonshire. They provide an absolutely fundamental role, which often goes a little bit below the radar. So I do think that we should put on record our appreciation of every voluntary group in Northamptonshire and for the services they provide. Yeah, I mean, we do, as Councillor Lee observes, we do have funding pressures as North Northamptonshire Council, as everyone is well aware. But we are able to mobilise £1.82 million in a variety of different funding sources to work with the voluntary and community sector in this year, and I think that is very much to be welcomed. There's been a lot of funding streams which coming in. It's obviously the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, the Multiply Fund for adult numeracy. Then there's the Rural Prosperity Fund. There are quite a lot of different funding streams, all of which tie in to trying to support our local economy, our local residents, and of course working with the voluntary and community sector in that. So it's absolutely brilliant to see that. So I enormously welcome this highly detailed strategic report I welcome the work that's gone into it, and I welcome the involvement of local area partnerships, community wellbeing forums, the individual charitable and voluntary groups themselves, and everybody who's fed into this. I think it's an excellent piece of work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brackenbury. Councillor Howes.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to support my colleague, Councillor Rowley, in this report. I think it's a good report, but I particularly wanted to highlight 4.22, which he's already alluded to. Although we're open to parish and town councils coming to us to look at taking over assets and services, we made a commitment very early on in this administration that we weren't going to wholesale devolve and put huge amounts of pressure on them to take on services and assets. And I'm just really pleased that we are continuing that line. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Howes. I'd like to interject a little bit about that. And that's a very useful point that you make, because we did make that promise that we wouldn't just shirk off our responsibilities onto town and parish councils. However, I am heartened to hear that there is a selection of town and parish councils that are champing at the bit to take on services. With a meeting you and I had with Danny Moody from NCALC. So I look forward to seeing those proposals come through via NCALC as well. But you're right to highlight that we won't offload stuff needlessly, and it'll only be with the parish and town councils wishing to do so. So, Councillor Howe.
Thank you, Leedy. Yeah, I also welcome this report. And let's not forget that there are plenty of other funding streams out there. We do have a lot of other funding streams, and we do welcome all of the voluntary sector applying for those funding, and we do advertise those funding streams as and when they come available, so do watch out. But one of the things that I'm very pleased to see, again, is that we, as members, will be still getting our Member Empowerment Fund. And as we stand at the moment, we have three ward members in each area, which equates to about £6,000 between all three. So that's not an insignificant amount of money that we can help support these sectors with. So I welcome this report, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I'm just looking to have a quick look round. There's no one else wishing to speak. So back to you, Councillor Rowley, just to wrap up on some of those comments. And I know you moved the report, but we will look for a seconder for you.
Yeah, just welcome all the comments. I think I've answered most of them and fully endorse what everyone said. So just move the report.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rowley. Would someone like to second that report? Councillor Howes. Thank you very much. So the item has been moved and seconded, and the recommendations are on page 151 and 152 of the agenda pack. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. If we can invite Councillor Mercer back in. Councillor Mercer, I hope you enjoyed your 15 minutes out there. So you had some correspondence to do, did you? Yeah. That's it. Very busy. Item 10, Levelling Up in Northamptonshire Plan 2024. It's an update progress report. And Councillor Buckingham, I'd like to address the meeting if you've got a maximum of 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. And I have my notes in front of me now. So whilst I welcome this report, only one area of the action plan is green, 2 red and 1 amber. Whilst we understand that there have been different portfolio holders that have been appointed, there doesn't seem to be a full coordination of the action plan and outcomes for those areas. Most of the achievements have come from other programme funding. When the action plan was put in place, there was to be a cross-party working. And one of the first priorities was young people, which seems to have slipped down. Is there a committee working party helping with the action plan? Excuse me. And the targets? And has Councillor Rowley now visited the 3 levelling up areas and talked to the residents and the communities within those areas? Thank you.
forget my microphone. Thank you very much for that, Councillor Valerie Anslow. If you'd like to come and address the meeting, please.
So the progress summary on the levelling up of North Northants shows that there's been some good work going on since the Levelling Up steering group, of which I was a member. It is clear that this item is linked to the previous item, for most of the work that's taken place and is hoped to take place is from the voluntary and community groups. And of course, support through grants is a key element. Point 7 on page 229 identifies the crucial part that community hubs will play in developing programmes and work that the communities identify as needing. Corby seems to be the place for community-based neighbourhood hubs. Corby's strong Labour Borough Council knew what they were doing when they wanted those strong neighbourhood centres. They built strong communities. Think how other areas identified as left behind would be helped if neighbourhood centres had some core funds and were not scrabbling around for a grant here and there for a project that is not long term. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to invite Councillor Rowley to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. To answer some of the questions, the red, amber, green on the reports is short, medium and long-term objectives. So that's why there's only one green. There is a group set up to help with the ongoing support for this that you mentioned. And in terms of visiting the areas, I have visited the areas myself, but, and I've spoken to a few residents, but not as many as I'd like as yet. That's planned rolling forward. And Councillor Anslow, as you said about community centres, as mentioned in the last report, that's a review that's going on over the next 12 months. So this report is to provide a progress report for the Levelling Up action plan and agree process steps for the further consideration of the progress report set out on page 5 of Appendix A. The Scrutiny Review presented its report to the Scrutiny Commission in July 2022, and the final report was agreed by the Exec in 2022 August meeting. Appendix B shows a summary position of the programme to date. A summary of the key achievements for each recommendation was given in section 4.9, but some of the highlights include in the winter of 2023, there was an engagement event in Kettering and Corby that saw 100 attendees receive small hampers as part of an engagement opportunity with key stakeholders. In October 2023, engagement events in Kettering for family and young people saw over 100 attendees. We've seen a pilot TOTS group turn into a sustainable group during this time. Fresh Fest held an event in Wellingborough in September 2023 through the LAP to promote local offers to young people. 63% of those young people who attended were from the left behind areas. Well Northants programme is a residents-led neighbourhood action group and plans for the 3 left behind communities. Commenced a pilot project with the probation service to target resources for things such as cleansings, graffiti removal and vegetation clearance. Residents supported to bid and deliver projects funded through the Well Northants programme. There was 105,000 investment in youth-related projects through the shared prosperity funding. The Knife Angel Knife Crime Awareness Programme was delivered during 2022, and new CCTV cameras were installed in both Hemmingwell and Queensway estates in Wellingborough. The officers will continue to work with these communities to ensure that what has been achieved in the levelling up process will become the new norm for the benefit of all residents throughout North Northants. This report has been to an EAP where its comments have been taken on board. I therefore propose the recommendations in 3.1 for the reasons set out in 3.2. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rowley. I'm just looking at members if they've got any comments to make in relation to this report. Councillor Binley.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few bits to pick up on this. I think it's an absolute brilliant piece of work that's been carried out, and I thank the officers for putting this paper together. First of all, I just want to draw attention and really pay special thanks to Stephen Mould, our Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner, for his support in this area, as he's really supported us in the left behind areas, both with Safer Streets and Safer Streets Light. And also, so of course that's been carried out in Queensway, and it's also been carried out in Kingswood as Safer Streets Light. But also there's further work going on there as part of the Community Safety Partnership. And again, Stephen Mould is very, very supportive of this, and he has even been to visit the left behind areas as well and see what additional work can be carried out there, working in partnership with the likes of Community Payback and so on. I would also highlight that there are lots of other things going on within the council that can't necessarily be included in the report or can't always be captured for those left behind areas. But I think the main thing is the fact that we have that focus and that attention on those left behind areas now. And, you know, we've got officers thinking, and we've got, you know, the third sector thinking about these areas and considering them when they're making any decisions. You know, and talking about visiting of the area, of the various areas. I mean, I can't speak for other ward councillors, but what I can say is that I know our new chief executive is coming to visit my left behind area on the 11th of March. So I would hope that other councillors in their left behind wards have also invited the chief executive to come along and see those left behind areas and what's going on in them. But it is about that constantly thinking about these left behind areas. So, for example, I had a meeting with Voi. We've talked about Voi earlier. Now, Voi have a huge part to play in our left behind areas in providing an alternative, cheap, clean form of transport in those areas. And what they have seen is they have seen a higher usage rate in the left behind areas. So not making any commitment from them at this stage, because it's in its very early stages, but one of the things I did discuss with them is to whether there's any possible discount that could be applied for voice scooters that are hired in those left behind areas. And that is something that they're going away and looking at. So it's just about us always thinking about if there's any support that can be provided, and also how those things can perhaps be replicated across the rest of the area. Because the last thing we want to do is then have other areas fall behind as a result of us just focusing on those three specific areas. So thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Binley. I'm just looking around. Any other comments? Councillor Edwards.
Yeah, just a very quick note. I noticed in the report that the play equipment in Kingswood has been refreshed, actually. So that is something that is really good for the youth and the young people. And I know that was done through public consultation with residents in that area. And I know we're certainly looking to do that within the other two areas as well. So it's a really positive step forward for young people. So I welcome that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Just a good man, there's no further comments. So I'm going to go back to Councillor Rowley just to wrap up, and I know you've moved the report, and I will find you a seconder.
Yeah, thank you for Councillor Binley's comments, and I open up the opportunity for any councillor in the left behind area who wants me to do a tour of their areas. I'm more than happy to make myself available. But otherwise, I propose the report as per 3.2.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rowley. And I know Councillor Howell wishes to second the report, so we have a proposer and a seconder. The recommendations are set out on your agenda packs, about page 206. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. I have had some indications that people are wishing to take a comfort break, so we're going to take a quick 15-minute comfort break. Thank you. Right, good morning or good afternoon, whatever it is now. Thank you very much for your attendance. We shall now continue with item 11, Corby Business Academy SEND provision. So I'd like to invite Councillor Lynn Buckingham to address the meeting. Councillor Buckingham, you have 3 minutes. Item 11. That's okay. No, just you, Councillor Buckingham. It's okay. If you could put your microphone on, please, Councillor Buckingham. Thank you.
Agenda item 11, SEND provision. Whilst any increase of SEND provision can only be welcomed in many areas across the north of the county, we do know that there is so much more that needs to be done. Will any of the new provision be for 16 plus pupils, of which there is no provision in the area that the school is in, that has been identified as being so important if people are to reach their potential? Just a quick question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Buckingham. I'd like to invite Councillor Edwards to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. And so this report is for the Corby Business Academy SEND provision. So currently Corby Business Academy does have a SEND provision within their school, and we're looking to extend it by a further 28 places, which is much needed within North Northants. We've talked numerous times about the high levels of EHCPs and those who require these placements. We're utilising existing rooms within Corby Business Academy that are no longer needed. So currently they have a therapeutical pool, which we're going to then turn into a classroom to facilitate the children. Councillor Buckingham, I'm going to have to come back to you with the answer about the 16 to 18, because I'm not 100% sure, although I know it is 13 plus, because obviously it's a secondary school. And secondary school places are a lot harder to come by as well than primary school places. So this certainly is a fantastic opportunity for Corby. So 2 classrooms will be created, and as I've said, 28 pupil places. It's a secondary school that currently provides SEND provision, and I welcome this report. You will see that over the past year, we've done quite a lot of work in increasing the number of SEND provision within mainstream schools and having extra units. You will also see that later on in the agenda, Raunds Manor School has also got an extra provision going in there. It hasn't got a separate paper because it's not as much money as it is for the Corby Business Academy, but this is a welcome report, and absolutely we have got more to do in the SEND area, but absolutely we are working on it. So I move this report.
Thank you very much, Councillor Edwards. Just looking around the table at members, any comments to make in relation to this report? No? Okay. So, Councillor Edwards, you have moved the report. Can I look for a seconder, please? Councillor Howell, thank you very much. Recommendations are on page 238 of the agenda pack. They've been moved and seconded. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. We move on to item 12, Capital Outrun Report 23-24, Draft Outline of Period 9. I'd like to invite Councillor Hakewell to address the meeting. Councillor Hakewell, you have a maximum of 3 minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Smithers. I assume that 3 minutes never changes. But anyway, in Appendix A, General Fund Capital Programme, the figures show a massive shortfall of 35 million in delivering the General Fund Capital Programme. In Appendix B, Housing Revenue, a shortfall of 15 million in the capital expenditure, which means a total of 50 million, part in the area of housing, which is one of the most demand-led pressures we face as a council. What measures is the executive putting in place to create a viable and deliverable capital programme? Because to me, this sounds more HS2 than seeing projects through. In 7.7, and therefore consideration by scrutiny, 7.7.1 says the report will be considered at a future meeting of the Finance and Resources Scrutiny Committee. That committee doesn't exist as far as I know. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hakewell, for picking up that inaccuracy in that report. And I'm sure we will get that amended when the report is taken up. So, I would like to ask Councillor Bunday to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. And can I say some of Councillor Hakewell's comments will be addressed within what I'm about to say. Yes, we obviously need to change finance and governance scrutiny to, finance and resources to corporate scrutiny, and we will do that. This report sets out the provisional capital outturn position for 23-24 as at period 9. It provides commentary on the Council's current financial outturn position for 2023-24 as at period 9 for both the General Fund and the HRA capital programmes. It should also be recognised at this point that the final outturn position may be affected by any changes arising from the outstanding audits from the legacy authorities. It also includes any new schemes which have been approved since the 1st of April 2023. The outturn forecast for 2023-24 as at period 9 in respect of the General Fund capital programme shows a revised capital budget position of £94.2 million, including slippage and in-year approved programmes. The outturn position is currently estimated at a spend of £59 million, which represents a slippage underspend of £35.1 million against the budget. The table at 5.1 sets out the General Fund capital programme and is also detailed by directorate at Appendix A. The table at paragraph 5.5 sets out the anticipated funding sources for this spend. The development pool was fully reviewed as part of the 23-24 budget challenge sessions. Additionally, a number of schemes were added back to the development pool as part of the 22-23 draft outturn report, which was presented in June of 2023. The current development pool is detailed at Appendix C. The development pool for 24-25 has also been reviewed as part of the 24-25 budget setting process. The outturn of the HRA capital programme shows a revised budget for 23-24 of £23.4 million, which includes slippage from 22-23 of some £8.7 million. The outturn is showing a forecast spend of £8 million, which represents an underspend of £15.4 million compared to budget. This will be reviewed and reprofiled considering the latest position. Detailed analysis by project is shown in Appendix B. The table at paragraph 5.7 sets out the housing revenue account by the two neighbourhood accounts. And with that, Chair, I'm happy to propose the recommendations of paragraph 3.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bunday. Are any comments in relation to this paper? Councillor Rowley.
Just like to point out the deficit on the HRA capital fund will be because there's three housing developments that are currently ongoing or are about to start. So once they've completed, that money will be spent.
Thank you very much. Just looking around the table. No other comments in relation to this. So that report has been moved. Can someone second the report for me, please? Councillor Howell, thank you very much. The report has been moved and seconded. The recommendations are set out on page 248 of your agenda packs. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we now move on to item 13, Capital Programme Update 23-24. I'd like to invite Councillor Hakewell to address the meeting. Councillor Hakewell, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Smithers. I welcome this initiative to increase biodiversity. It seems highly inconsistent that the Council is enhancing biodiversity with one hand and taking it away with the other. For example, Rothwell's green space, which is destined to be a biodiversity net loss. Would it not be more logical to plant trees there rather than concrete? In relation to the community orchards and micro woodlands, 5.7, Coronation Living Heritage Fund has made a grant award offer to set up our own grant scheme to help the local community groups to plant orchards. These will be planted to celebrate the coronation year and will provide a lasting commemoration for communities. Are these offers confirmed, or are they offers based on some form of commitment from NNC or other groups wishing to take advantage of the planting opportunity? Are they confirmed, or indeed match funding? When will this funding be available? How will agreement on the 3-year maintenance be established, especially in times of drought, when no immediate access to mains water is available within the vicinity? Item 6.6.1, if approved, progress on the schemes will be monitored by project boards where appropriate. Who will be on those tree planting schemes? Will there be people with knowledge of ensuring how woodland is maintained? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hakewell. So I'd like to invite Councillor Bunday to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm sure that your questions will be answered by the relevant portfolio holders. This report provides commentary on the Council's forecast for the revenue outturn position. Oh, sorry, no. I've got the wrong report. Apologies, Chair. This report has 5 capital projects attached to it, 2 SEND provisions which will be funded through external grant, and 1 environment from capital receipts which has already been approved, which is to allow upgrade of our ICT equipment, and then 2 projects, 1 community orchards and the other micro woodlands, which are to be funded through external grant. And with that, Chair, I'm happy to propose the recommendation at paragraph 3.1 of item 13, not 14.
Thank you very much. Members, is it Councillor Edwards?
I welcome this, as alluded to earlier on about the Corby Business Academy and the Manor School Rawns for the SEND provision. It's positive that we're doing something about it and helping those children have places. And I also welcome the community orchards. I think it's a great initiative, and I look forward to getting schools and youth organisations involved with that process in creating the orchards. So I welcome this report.
Thank you very much, Councillor Edwards. Just looking around the table. No other comments. So, sorry, Councillor Howe.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's only a quick comment. It's obviously, Councillor Hakewell's brought up something that, as usual, has absolutely nothing to do with the report. But I will try to correct the misinformation. He suggested there'll be a biodiversity net loss to the green space if that proceeds into a stopping site. There's nothing in the report that says that. And secondly, the ambition and aim is that we enhance the remaining 2/3 of the area. And actually, the ambition is that we will get a net biodiversity net gain. So, again, we're trying to correct misinformation. Thank you.
Why not let the truth get in the way of a good argument, eh? So, moving on, we've had that item proposed. Can we look for a seconder, please? Councillor Edwards, thank you very much. So the recommendations are set out on page 266 of the agenda pack. They've been moved and seconded. Have a show of hands in favour, please.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. So item 14, budget forecast update as of 23/24 P9. Councillor Hakewell, would you like to come and have your 3 minutes?
Thank you, Councillor Smithers. Obviously, I don't have a right to reply, but I will reply to Councillor Howes. Item 4.2, position at period 9. We have a 10 million black hole in our finances. What is expected to be the year-end figure when between periods 8 and 9, the overspend has increased by 1.5 million. The net budget was increased in 4.4 in period 6 by £1.9 million from 337 million to 339 million. This reflects the use of the Transformation Reserve to fund Education Case Management System and Education Case Management System, 1.3 million, and the development of a regulatory case management system, 600,000. How is this 1.962 million described as transformation when the upgrading and replacement of software systems is more a general maintenance budget? What transformation, in the truest sense of the word, will this new near 2 million budget achieve? Thank you.
Councillor Bunday, would you like to introduce the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. What I would say is that unless it's some people's observations, in April 2021, we moved from having 5 legacy authorities into 1. And part of that means that we had to update and amalgamate software to run that. And as some of the transformation does mean that you take the software and you have to then amalgamate the data and everything else. That is transformation in my book. This report provides the commentary on the Council's forecast for the revenue outturn position 23-24 based on the information available at period 9 December 2023. The forecast position for each of the funds is as follows. The General Fund, an overspend of £10.12 million, Housing Revenue Account, an overspend of £26,000, and the Dedicated Schools Grant, an overspend of £9.1 million. The main movements between period 8 and period 9 are the Children's, which is £1.934 million adverse movement. The Children's Trust are forecasting an overspend of £29.7 million. This is an increase of over £5 million to that previously reported to the Executive, where the forecast pressure was £24.6 million. The cost to this council, based on the forecast, is just over £13 million. If these pressures are not mitigated, this will pose a significant financial risk. The Trust are looking to add potential mitigations. However, there is a risk that this position could worsen before the year end. A key risk is the delivery of efficiency savings of £7.6 million, which form part of the contract sum. At present, the Trust is forecasting that over £1 million of these savings are at risk of non-delivery. This could increase the overall pressure to £30.74 million. Other directorates, the place is showing a favourable movement of £281,000 and enabling a favourable movement of £195,000. As I remind members, at every opportunity, the main risk to this council, along with inflationary impact, is our demand-led services. The main saving to offset the pressures comes from additional investment income of £5.8 million. This reflects the increase in Bank of England base rate and future investments, and is based on an average cash balance of £175.6 million at a weighted average interest rate of 5.04% for a full year. The details of the movement against the budget is set out in the report and summarised in the table at paragraph 4.2. The Council's corporate contingency budget for 23-24 is £3.746 million, which represents around 1% of the net budget. The contingency budget is held to meet unknown or unplanned unbudgeted costs. The recent pay award has resulted in a pressure of £2.222 million. This will be funded from the contingency budget, leaving a balance of £1.524 million. At this stage, the contingency budget is assumed to be used in full during the year, and this will include inflationary and demand pressures. The Council's overall outturn forecast for the Housing Revenue Account as at period 9 is forecast an overspend of £26,000 against an approved budget of £38.752 million. The details of the movement against budget is set out in the report at section 6. The Council's overall outturn forecast for the designated schools grant is a forecast overspend of £9.1 million against a net spend of £120.7 million. For 23-24, pressures have continued to increase, and it is now forecast that the high needs block overspend will be £9.82 million. Reserves of £720,000 have been used to mitigate this, leaving a forecast overspend of £9.1 million. Further details of the movement against budget are set out in the report at section 7. We recognise that it is and will continue to be a challenging time, but we will be working hard to balance our finances whilst protecting vital services, particularly those to our most vulnerable residents. And with that, Chair, I'm happy to propose the recommendations of paragraph 3.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bundy. I'm just looking around the table for any members' input there. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. And it was just to comment on the point about the education data recording service that is in there. It's going to make the service more efficient. So it's going to help parents get a better understanding and be able to log in, and then it will streamline the service a lot more. We're also issuing licenses so you can have better control over that service, and of course it's a legal obligation to have it as well, so that's why it's in there, but it is a complete transformation of that service. Thank you.
I was listening to Councillor Edwards. Councillor Brackenbury.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, it's a bleak position, but we all knew that. We are sort of being saddled by the demand-led services exceeding what they were originally budgeted for. I just welcome your team and every directorate are working very hard to mitigate their costs, and I know that, I think that it should be put on record that, we are doing everything possible to be as efficient as possible while still providing the services that our residents should rightfully demand and expect. So, I think on the whole, let's just keep hacking on at it, and I think Janice and her team are, doing a really good job. And that also includes people in treasury management, much undersung, but it's really important that we maximise our investment opportunities and potentials as well, because some of that can be useful mitigation, as I think you alluded to just now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brackenbury. Just having a quick look around the table. There's no further comments, so Councillor Bundy has moved that report. Can I look for someone to second that report? Councillor Brackenbury, thank you very much. Now that report has been moved and seconded. The recommendations are set out on page 274 of the agenda pack. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. So, urgent items of business. I've not received any requests to consider any urgent items of business at this meeting. So that concludes the business on this agenda, and I would like to thank everyone that's come along, councillors, executive, members of the public that are viewing online, and I declare the meeting now closed. Thank you very much.